episode number 66. This episode is brought to you by our Career Kickstart program, where we help working mums who are feeling stuck, overwhelmed and frustrated to take the next best step in their career. Figuring out your next career move can be tough, and when you add motherhood into the mix, well, things can get really complicated. So through our program, we help you to move away from being frustrated and overwhelmed to getting to a place where you are loving your work and life. If this sounds good to you, then head over to our website at www.lightboxcoaching.com and find out more information. Hi, you're listening to the Careers Beyond Motherhood podcast with your host, Janine Esbrand. I'm here to help working mums like you to thrive in your careers and in motherhood. I share tips, strategies and inspirational conversations with awesome women to help reduce the struggle in your juggle.
Time for a day, Mummy.
Hello, and welcome to the show. How are you doing? I hope well. I am doing okay. I am just recovering from a crazy busy couple of weeks. If you tuned into the last episode of the podcast, you will know that I had the opportunity to speak at a conference. Now, I had a short time frame to prepare a keynote talk, and so it was a pretty busy couple of weeks with quite a few late nights preparing my talk on negotiation for gender balance. It was a brilliant event. The whole day was fabulous. There was a great lineup of speakers and workshops, and it was just an honor to be a part of it. And I'm very grateful that the talk went very well. People definitely got a lot from it and it was well received. So I'm glad that is all done and dusted and that I had that opportunity. And my daughter turned 2 this weekend, so we had those celebrations as well. And I'm just amazed at how fast the time has gone. I cannot believe that she is 2. I am now focused and looking forward to what is coming up. So before I dive into the content for this week's episode, I wanted to share with you an event that I am planning that's coming up in August. It is a workshop and it is focusing on how to find work that you love beyond motherhood. And in this lunchtime 90-minute live workshop, we are going to be diving into what you should be doing to make sure that you are finding or creating work that you love whilst raising your family. So this is a live event. It's taking place in Surrey. So if you are local or would like to come and travel down, come and join us for this workshop because it's going to be amazing. Speaking at the event recently just reminded me how much I love speaking and connecting with people in person. So if you can come along, come and join us. Okay, on to today's episode. I am speaking to an amazing mother of 3. She is also a barrister. She is a woman who wears many hats. She sits on boards. She runs an organisation called Women in the Law. I'm going to be speaking to Sally Penni and we dive into lots of different topics, including how to play the long game when it comes to your career and how to continue to develop and advance post-motherhood. So it's an awesome conversation. I cannot wait for you to hear it. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Hi, Sally. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am super excited to interview you. Can you introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a bit about you?
Thank you, Janine. My name is Sally Penni, Penny with an I, and I am a barrister at law. I've been a barrister for 20 years next year. I have 3 children. I'm the founder and CEO or chair of Women in the Law UK, which is an organisation trying to support, inspire, connect the next generation of lawyers. Men are welcome, but predominantly women. And that's me.
Awesome. There's so much I want to ask you about because I know you do so many different things while you are practicing as a barrister and you're a mum of 3. So there's so much I want to dive into. But before I do that, can you kind of speak to us about what your career looked like before you were a mum and whether it changed much afterwards? I know you mentioned that you've been a barrister for 20 years, but has your practice changed since becoming a mum?
Yes. So before I did what was called a common law pupillage, and that's just an old-fashioned word for saying you did a bit of everything when you were training. Pupillage is a supervision period for barristers. And so I did a bit of everything, and I fell more into crime. I did, family, crime, chancery, ancillary relief, family, which is like the money side of family, all those things. And then as a tenant, I did mainly criminal law and some employment law. And, my practice was really, I think, successful, whatever success can mean. But at that time, no children. Success looked like, a lot of money, sports cars, all of that. And then post-children, people carrier, not all my people carrier, I've given in, no convertibles. And then career-wise, the change was interesting because it was like starting again. So, and as a self-employed barrister, there wasn't any support really to say how you should manage your careers. There aren't that many women. The statistics look good in terms of entrance. We're at about 52% now, I think, who are women. And the senior levels are still low. And so I sort of looked to some of the women that there were when I first had my first child, who's now 8, will be soon 9, so about 10 years ago. And the practice afterwards did look very different because one, like most women at the bar at that time, you had to sort of hide your pregnancy. And then when you were outed, because you just got bigger so visibly, and then think about what the practice was going to look like when you came back. Court work is long hours. And so for me, I had to think about maybe doing more paperwork, so more preparatory work. My craft is preparing cases and being the advocate of court. That is what I love. That's what I do. I found that actually I really quite like my children. And I wanted to spend time with them afterwards. So I had to really think about my practice. So my practice did change, and that got me thinking about other things that I could do in addition to the law to allow me to practice. So I sit on several boards. Before I had children, I sat on a board called Rethink, which is a mental health charity. It's like the sister charity of mine. And so I did more of those sort of boards. I now sit on a fintech board called CodeThink. We make parts for various automobile cars, big ones, so I can't really name. And I give employment advice in a non-exec capacity. So it means that, and I sit on a theatre board, I'm a school governor, not on my children's school. And so I think boards has been one of the ways that has allowed me to continue my practice as a lawyer, because actually being in court every day is good, but it doesn't always cover my childcare. So in terms of the change in practice, I did have to think about, well, what does that look like? Do I want to pick up my children or just have somebody who picks them up all the time so they think they've got a second mother? No. And I didn't want to be making a choice between motherhood or career. Actually, I enjoy my job. I was good at it. And I enjoy the job of looking after children. I'm good at it. So I wanted to do both. And so I did have to think very hard about what other people were doing, how they were managing it, and how I could manage that.
I think that's brilliant, because a lot of people feel stuck when they have to get to that crossroads, and some people feel like it's all or nothing. So it's, I can either go back to working how I was before, or I can't, and I just have to stay home and be a stay-at-home mum. And that might not be something that they want to do, but they don't necessarily see the options. So it's good to hear you kind of talk about the process that you went through. It's like, okay, I know I want to do it, so how can I make it happen? And then find the best way that would work for you in terms of, what you wanted to do and what could work.
Yes, I suppose to a large extent, it sounds very organised, doesn't it? Probably because I've had so many children. You have to be creation. I haven't had that many. It's only 3, but it feels like it's about 3,000. But it was a bit of a ad hoc learning as well on it. So yes, I had to plan it, and then with the other children, I did really have to think about it and learn actually as well from mistakes. Don't get me wrong, there's been incidents where the nursery's phoned saying, oh, we've still got William still here. He says Daddy's coming. And you're thinking, oh, crikey, stuck in some court. The chart hasn't worked very well, which tells me where each child is at every point of the day. So I think one of the things, though, is that I'm not sure that as professional women, we share enough about what we're doing to inspire others to think about it. So, for example, if people are stuck at home, I would say, what about writing articles about various things? What about doing seminars in the evening, perhaps where, father or partners are at home and can take care of some of that childcare, you could then go out in the evening to give a seminar or at least attend a seminar if you're a professional mum at home. And because I think that sort of stuck feeling is not nice. And in truth, we all feel it. For goodness sake, work is the only place you can go where no one follows you to the toilet.
Yes, totally.
Interrupts a conversation or do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Of course, some people want to stay at home. That's a great choice. But for the majority of us who've invested in years in our career, whether it's legal, medicine, other careers, I don't just mean those sort of obvious ones. Actually, of course we love our work. That's why we've invested in it. And so, yes, being able to actually, people stand up in the room when I walk in. How great is that? Of course I want to go back.
Yeah, absolutely. The children don't follow suit, do they?
No. Mummy, wipe my bottom. No one says that to me at work, actually.
So talk to me a little bit about the women in the law, because I know that you're doing some brilliant work in terms of events and connecting women who are in the law and that need support. But it would be good for you to share a bit more about the organisation. And I know that you recently launched a podcast. So talk to us a bit about that.
So Women in the Law UK, I set that up. And this is, I suppose, is a bit personal now. I hadn't thought about it in this way. So one of my children, my eldest, was diagnosed with leukemia when he was 1.5 years, and that was a real crap time and a shock out of the blue. And then I thought, oh gosh, and that was kind of the backdrop. So I thought, well, if this is like the worst thing that could happen to any mother, any family, and he had to have a bone marrow transplant, and then we needed donors and so on, and it was protracted. Horrible time for him, more so than me, but obviously as his mother. But I thought, well, if this is the most awful thing that can happen, what if you're just a woman who's having issues in your career, or you need some sort of support network, or you don't know about career progression, or you just need sort of to be inspired a little? And so I set that up, but very basic. And in the main, we're having sort of once a year an annual dinner with an inspirational speaker, an opportunity to be with other people, like-minded or otherwise, and there was men and women. And then I tracked the people who came to those dinners. I mean, it wasn't very big. But what happened to their careers, their career progression, what actually career progression looked like. And I just found that there was between 70 and 90% of people who attended that dinner had some sort of career progression. They either became QCs or judges or promotions in work and so on and so forth. And I thought this isn't a bad thing. So that then developed. We still had the annual dinner into monthly events, which is really where I wanted to go, talking about well-being, talking about planning one's future career, so far as fertility and home life is concerned, and then talking about career progression. So they're kind of masterclasses, really, if you like, but with speakers who are relatable, not speakers who have had, a gardener, a housekeeper, a nanny, an au pair, and I don't know about you, but that's a wonderful life, to stay-at-home husband. But I've not had that. I work hard. My husband works hard. And we have children. And so I wanted just to have somewhere where we can all kind of inspire each other. It's not WI, it's professional women. And so how to communicate effectively in board meetings, for example, how to stand, how to deliver a presentation, all these things that actually, some of us women are not good at. But if we learn, then we can have a seat at the table and therefore have career progression if that's what we want. So at least we can be at the table being offered or, be invited to the party and have a chance of being asked to be danced, if I can use that analogy. So that's what Women in the Law UK and business is, because I think actually the legal sector needs to learn from what our business counterparts are doing and entrepreneurs, so industry and commerce. So we have a variety of events. I mean, recently we had one, what can lawyers learn from inspiring women in sport? So that was Baroness Tanni Gray-Thompson, who was a Paralympian. She's got so many medals, actually, I can't even remember them all. And then we had the England Lioness goalkeeper, Karen Barsley, talking about her career and what she has learned. She talked a lot about reflecting on incidents and learning from failure. And then various other people, including Chris Brinsley, MBE, who was a man, and he was injured. He was set to be a footballer. And age 17, he was dropped because he broke his leg in 4 places. And he'd never had a father because his father walked out on his mother when he was very young. And he grew up on a council estate. And he sits on various boards, and he talked a lot about leadership. What does leadership mean? And so I think those of us in the legal sector and business can just learn from other industries. What are they doing? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating they've got it right, but I think we can learn. Sport does create inclusive cultures, team sports, how to train, that kind of performance requirements and that kind of requirement for mental agility and resilience. So that was recently. And then there's other stuff coming up about how to communicate effectively. What does career progression look like, particularly in the legal sector? How do you actually become a partner? Do you want to be a partner? And financial well-being, of course, which is very close to my heart because I think burnout rate in the professional sector is extremely high. And that was supported by some research that I commissioned to look at several things, actually. Research number 1 is called the Penni Report, and that's an independent talent consultant speaking to women who have left the profession, solicitors and barristers, and why they've left. And it's not all of them is not all due to childcare. Those who have remained, why they've remained, and what practices are good practices for encouraging women. Because if you just talk about the bottom dollar, if I may, investing in solicitors, training them, women, et cetera, and then not supporting them so they leave the profession, it's a waste of money.
Absolutely.
Cost the economy billions. So there's a moral argument, obviously, but the fact is it's a huge drain. And so actually, if you create a supportive environment, create a pool, allow for coaching, and executive performance coaching, all of these things, you can support the talent. Yeah. So that's been one of the key drives. And then the other research so that's phase 1. Phase 2 is looking at how we get women to stay and what the millennials are looking for now as they enter the workplace, particularly women. Are they expecting? They're not expecting to work for 5-day weeks, and they're not expecting to be paid a pittance for working 3 days and be grateful. They expect a workplace that's encouraging of them. And there's not just for families, like, our generation is a big thing. They want to go off and do triathlons for 2 days a week. Therefore, they want to work 3 days only. Yeah. They're not in it for jobs for life. And then the phase 3 of the research is looking at BAME women, so Black minority ethnic women, and why it is, particularly in the legal profession, the leadership roles go to them. And so, there's so few of us, not just because of the numbers in proportion to society, but for instance, women, all of us, Caucasian and BMEs, we make up half of the population, but we're not in half of the senior leadership positions. And it's even worse for BAME, particularly in the legal profession, where they are 73% less likely, that's a statistic from the SRA, to make partnership than a white male counterpart. Why is that? And what can we actually do? And if you look, it is, in the same way as there are very few senior women in solicitors' firms and equity partners. There are, but they're not that many. And the same way as there aren't on boards, and in the same way as in the judiciary and in the bar, in my profession, very few heads of chambers, actually 1 or 2 deputies, and very few women still in the higher echelons of the judiciary. The High Court is improving. The Court of Appeal is improving a little. The Supreme Court, we've got 3 women there now. The first president, who was appointed last year, although she will be retiring. And so we'll be left with 2 women. And so the research is looking at BAME women, because I am a BAME woman. And so it's important to illustrate some of these issues. When you have different people at the seat of the table, you get different outcomes. And that's the whole point of diversity. It's not just the obvious diversity, but you get diversity of thought, boardroom. Well, McKinsey's proved it, hasn't it? rules. So I needn't reiterate it here. But so that's what, those research is about. And the other research is about inequalities in law, because we know there are inequalities, but you'll be amazed how often, if I'm giving, speeches in companies in the city, footsie run, they say, it's all right now. Everyone, the women are okay now. They've got some rights.
It's a long way to go.
Exactly. Well, crikey. Yeah, a very long way to go. I suspect what's happened is we're talking more about it. And there's a good time to be a woman because we've got more role models speaking out.
Yeah.
So I think our male colleagues and counterparts think, it's all right. And the millennials, because they've seen they've got mothers who go to work and earn and so on. The younger ones don't really see a massive problem. And so there's, for example, the gender pay gap in them is less. So the answers aren't there. But yeah, so that's what some of that research is about. The podcast is about showcasing real role models and their careers in the law, in the hope that we can inspire women to remain in the law and not leave, in the hope that we can all learn. I think it's really sort of African tradition that people sit around the fire in the evenings talking and regaling stories. And really, that's kind of what I want to do. I mean, I love podcasts. I love your podcast. This podcast is great because I think we can always take something away, whether you're on a tube or you're on a train going to London, as I often am. It's a great opportunity just to listen and learn from other women. So that's what that podcast is about. And we do have men on there too, male champions, particularly those who are creating environments for women to thrive in, mothers.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic law firm called Hall Brown, and they're a relatively small family law firm. But you get sacked if you miss your child's sports day.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. It's just like, of course, it's a no-brainer. Why would you be sitting here doing that? So they're doing some really interesting things. Everybody's got flexible working, and they're two men. And I really love what they're trying to do. And I love how to create a better workplace, because both their wives work. And so both of them drop off their children at school every morning as much as possible. And that sets good boundaries. Nobody should be working in the office till 9 o'clock in the evening. And if the partner's doing that, well, of course, the staff are not going to leave earlier. But if you set good role model, it would improve. Sorry, I sounded like Marge Simpson just then.
I just love all that you're doing. And so in terms of the reports and the research that you've done, will you share with me where we can find those, and I can put links?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Because I think that it's true, especially the what you were saying about educating people about how to do the soft skills that women don't necessarily learn when you're doing your training contract. You learn the technical side, but the stuff that's going to help you to really progress, and the things that you don't know, there's things that you don't know because you don't know. It's great that bringing those to the forefront, because when you are enlightened, you're like, oh, so that makes so much sense. That's why I'm not getting that promotion, or that's why I should, be speaking to these people and networking, and I should know certain people within the firm and the organization and within my industry to help me to get ahead. All of this stuff that you learn as you go, but not everybody has access to that learning. So I love that you're kind of highlighting that through your events and stuff. And then getting this knowledge through the research that you've done is also really good.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, yes, it is interesting because I just think, I didn't know, and this was, and I suppose an example of it. I mean, we all dread networking. You're probably brilliant at it, you're going to say. But you just think, oh, this is like death. Shoot me now. But if someone actually tells you that, so what we had this communication expert who came to speak to women in the law, and it was a revelation, 65 women or something in the room. And the class, the masterclass event was called How to Communicate More Effectively or something like that. I can't remember. But she was saying, well, stand by the door. If you absolutely loathe something you have to go to, stand by the door. You'll get food easily. You can chat to people when they come in. And then she taught techniques about how to position yourself so you're more open. So women tend to be quite closed in their sort of networking, and how to go and intervene in a conversation where you really want to speak to somebody, but they're standing in a way that doesn't allow you to. All these nuances and etiquette.
Yeah.
Honestly, It was, and I thought, gosh, it's true. So if two men are speaking to each other across, it's hard for you to get into that conversation, to make eye contact because they're so entwined. But there are techniques that we can use as women. I don't mean that, anything inappropriate like shaking your booty or that. But, and people have written books and this stuff, where you can go in and just kind of introduce yourself and then have a quick conversation and then leave. How to introduce other people into the conversation. For example, then in a networking situation, it's easier to go and join a group of 3.
Yeah.
All these things that we're not told, so that when, women in law firms, for example, are thinking, well, I never get any cases, or I know, I don't go down to the football all the time for the networking or whatever else. If they do get the opportunity to go, they know how to sort of deal with the situation.
Yeah.
Talk about the technical knowledge that we have, and and all this imposter syndrome stuff. And you're right. And so that's the soft skills that we've never been taught, and especially as barristers, crikey, we are responsible for our own business development, if you like, is what it would be called. But really, you're dependent on the clerks and what the clerks gives you, and whether women, particularly women, we know that women have less access to the senior and heavy duty cases, data protection, which is a crime, which is what I do a lot of now. Hardly any women, which is fine. But actually, if the barristers are networking or giving seminars, whatever it is, and getting work in their own name, it means it's very difficult for clerks and so on, who I would hope are not still doing this, but it means that they can't really work on the favoritism angle anymore and dish out the best cases to X or whatever, as represented in programs like Silk. And because then you'll be having work in your name from people who believe in you, rather than hoping that the clerks would feed you this or that, which is one of the angles. So, I mean, women in the law, it's grown, and there are loads more stuff that we would like to do. And the website is womeninthelawyuk.com, and you can listen to podcasts on there as well. And under resources, the reports are there. Phase 2's not out for a little while, which is the one with the recommendations. So that should be out in the summer. And then we've got a book coming out as well, which is celebrating 100 years since we were allowed to. We always say practice law, I suppose, because I'm barrister, you're solicitor. But actually, it's participate in the law, because we weren't even allowed to be jurors.
Wow.
Or magistrates. So, and I'm a real believer in, yes, it's great to celebrate. So we had a dinner, 300 people. Mrs. Justice Bobby Chuma Grubb was there. Lady Hale was there, the President of the Supreme Court, all giving speeches. It was a bit like, a nice dinner with, mini conference with a nice dinner, but in
Lovely.
3 hours. But so that's all good, great and good, but let's not forget there's a lot of work to be done. And all this celebration is fine, but I want to ensure there is a future for women in the profession in the next 100 years. So to do with that, we introduce a charter, and then a charter, firms and organizations, individuals can apply for it or sign up for it if they can demonstrate that they're tackling their gender pay gap, they are dealing with well-being in the workplace, they're championing BAME individuals, because we know that they are the people who tend to be left most in the professions behind. And there's a whole criteria, so they don't have to be doing all of those, but they have to be at least be doing some of them in order to qualify for the Women in the Law UK Charter. And I think having the charter just instills in people's minds, we need to be thinking about this, or not a tick box, but at least, it's quite something to be excited about. So that's what really that's about. And the book's really about where is the profession now, and who are the sort of next generation, if you like. But you know what I mean? It's important. I love history.
It is.
I live in a city which was built by slaves, but actually the people living in Rochdale, most cities actually in the UK are built in the north of England, Manchester, people who lived in the little provinces of Rochdale and Tameside and so on, went on protest against the use of slavery, and cotton, that whole strike. And I think how phenomenal that that's part of the history of Manchester.
Yeah.
People actually going, do you know what? Yes, we are white working class, but we're not standing for this. It's appalling. And we will go on strike. And I love the fact that our history tells us a lot, but we need to think about our future and ensuring there is a future for professional women in the legal profession, really, because it's still the one profession that the people are leaving left, right, and centre. And at the bar, there's a retention crisis for women barristers, according to a recent survey. So they're part of some of the work I'm doing, not in a, we want to have it all attitude, but actually it's right that we have families
Yeah.
that we like and enjoy, but we have a career if that's what we want to do, but we have the right skills and support for those careers. Not ability, that's a different argument. I get very cross when people get mixed up about competence and ability. And imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is that you're bloody good at a job, but there's a voice that's doubting on your shoulder, that's niggling at you, that puts you off. It's not a competence issue. If people are not competent at a job or they don't feel like they're up to something, that's a training issue. That needs to be raised with HR departments, pay for more courses and update them. I don't think it's that. That's not the issue. It's the other skills that we don't inherently have, or we're not taught, as you said, along the way, And it's like the boards argument, don't they? People say, well, there aren't enough women on boards because they don't want it. And you think, well, most women run their household. They decide where to shop. They decide, which supplier to supply their gas and electricity or whatever else. And they decide what to buy in a supermarket. That's running a company.
And then dealing with the children's different activities and parties and all of that. It's a lot.
Exactly. And that's multitasking, isn't it? That's ensuring that you've got people, at different training, different courses, CPID. It's the same thing. It's no different. It's just that we're better at it because we've got little people who are not rational. Managing. It's the same skills. So I would like to see as another avenue more women on boards, more mums, not PTA, that's fun, but skilled, being a treasurer, that will lead to, another board or a committee. It's still managing companies, sitting even on a PTA as a treasurer or as a secretary, whatever it is. It's not that different to a multi-million-pound board where you're the company secretary having to deal with GDPR and whatnot. Yeah, so I think that's actually a plug to get more women on boards, whatever you think, or committees, and then building up. Because, that's another avenue for plugging that gap where perhaps people are on career leaves.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? For children, it's a way of actually keeping your hand into skills. Most board meetings are every quarter. Subcommittees, can be a little bit more. Some boards can Skype in. A Zoom in. So you don't always need to be physically there. But I don't think there's anything wrong with people. If the board is in London or the committee is in London or wherever it is, it's quite nice to, sit on the train, read your book, go to the meeting, get back in time for childcare. So long as people can plan for it, it doesn't have to eat into the childcare arrangements or, people who are on mat leave or career breaks or caring duties. Do you know what I mean? I think
I think it's great. And I often say to people who are kind of at the early stage of motherhood and they're thinking, I just want to be with my baby and I don't really want to go back to work. I encourage them to think ahead and say, okay, this is how you feel now, but in the future you might not feel like that. So you want to make sure that you are keeping your fingers in some way, shape or form, so that in, a few years' time when you do want to put your foot on the gas with your career again, you haven't completely been out of the game.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So that's a really good point about boards, and the one that people should think about is one of the ways that you can make sure that you're just keeping yourself up to speed with what's going on, and you're not falling off the face of the earth when it comes to your career, and then trying to get back when the kids go back to school and feeling like I have no idea where to start with this.
Exactly. No, that is such fantastic. And my women in the law will love that advice because it's true. So you're not sort of scrapping behind. That's part of the reason actually why a lot of the women in law events and masterclasses are in the evening, so that, if kids are in bed, you can get out.
Yeah.
Or, at least, and we have, our calendar event is sort of planned for most of the year so that, if you look at it, you can at least make one or two things,
right,
and make arrangements far enough in advance. Just so you've got, your hand in it. You're right. Whether it's CV development or how to refresh your CV, boards, books. I think books and articles. I mean, I wrote a book for charity, but I've written several, but I've got another book coming out, actually. Not the Women in Law book about women in law, but it's a book on data protection, which is a follow-up to another book that I wrote, I contributed to, called Cybersecurity, Law and Practice. But do you know what I mean? The ability to be able to write as well. And social media, I mean, I have to say I'm rubbish at it. But I see people who've developed businesses by just using these free devices, because I know that's another thing that we women say we're not good at. So we have a masterclass called How to Be Indispensable in Social Media.
Oh, awesome. Everything's learnable. You can totally learn it. And, the way that things are moving, one of the things that I talk about with clients as well is using LinkedIn as a great way to network. So, if you can't go out to the events, there's ways that you can connect with people on LinkedIn that you couldn't do before social media, and build your network that way and start to have, conversations with people and arrange coffee chats with people so that you are expanding your network consistently, even if you can't go to the, the physical events.
Yes, that's a great idea, actually. Because, that's really good. You need to come and speak to my Women in the Law. You've got such great advice.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to come.
You need to work out London or... actually, we've got a conference in November, so we can work out.
We can do that. So before we just wrap up, I often like to ask guests if they have any kind of sayings or inspirational quotes that really stick with them and that they like to refer to. Do you have any that come to mind?
Do you know, I usually have plenty, but my mind's gone blank. So I'll just sort of go through, I suppose, some of them, really. There's a book that I contributed to called Fabulous, Inspirational and Over 40. I'm not saying that I am any of those things.
I think you're all of those.
But when I wrote it, I was 39, so I just qualified for being over 40. And so the 40 bit's the only bit that's true, I suppose. But in my chapter in it was for charity to raise money for my son's unit and the Anthony Nolan Trust. So, I've got copies if people want to buy it. It's only £10 and all the money goes to it. But one of the things I talk about there, I suppose, is I haven't got a copy in front of me because I'm at court lingering in the conference room before I go in, is above all, be true to thyself. And it's a quote actually from Hamlet, but it's really about being authentic. I can't be anybody else. I'm not posh. I'm not, I don't know. I think be true to you. Remember, I suppose, the quote is really, it just reminds me to be who I am.
Yeah.
And be my authentic self. People used to say, oh, fake it till you make it, which is a great saying. It's really about, having confidence until you're really comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's a great saying, but I can only be myself and I can't try to be anybody else. I'm not 6'5". I don't look like Naomi Campbell. So, I am a lawyer. I do know the law and I know, and I do believe in social justice and diversity. So I very much live and I do like my children. So I don't hide the fact that I have a family. And when I'm speaking at conferences and so on and so forth, I do say that. So I suppose, above all, be true to thyself and be authentic. Yeah, it's not glamorous or glorious. But the only other thing I suppose is that my mother always says, united, we're strong. We're better together, basically, she always says. United, divided, we fall. United, we fall. And I used to think, oh, shut up, Mum. The point is that we can't work in silos, and that's really what I've applied to women in the law. We can't work individually to do things. I'm very much about collaboration, not competition. If we all made the point of mentoring somebody who doesn't look like us, who's not from where we're from, or whatever it is, we make a massive impact. And if we all go, do you know what? We need more women, more men, more black men, more whatever in the profession, in the part of the profession which are not diverse. It doesn't matter whether we are white or black, but we can make an impact because we're united on the subject matter. So I suppose if I was permitted a second one, it would be that, which which is really about being united in one cause and not being divisive.
Thank you. That is awesome. I think I totally agree with that. That is brilliant. I'm going to share the links to your website with people. Is there anywhere else that you would direct people if they wanted to connect with you and learn more about the work?
Yes, please. So I'm Sally Penni on LinkedIn. I love it. And I always love it. People send me a message when they're requesting to connect with me on LinkedIn. On Twitter, I'm on Twitter at Sally Penni1 on Twitter. And then, of course, Women in the Law UK on Twitter, and on LinkedIn, the Women in the Law UK LinkedIn group. And the Talking Law podcast is on iTunes. Last month was Cherie Blair. And this month, I forget who it is, Nigel Poole, QC.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Yeah. I'm going to definitely check that out.
Yes. And also link me to this podcast, which I've listened to before, but, I'm not very clever on these technicals. So I can share it with the Women in the Law group, who are, I think, 4,500 people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sally. It's been awesome having you.
Absolutely.
Isn't Sally just awesome? I love how witty she is. I really enjoyed our conversation, and it was great to hear about her career journey and how she decided to be intentional about the type of lifestyle she wanted to live so that she could adjust the way that she worked to suit. So it's not always the case that we have to follow the conventional route and that route only. There are creative ways that we can make our work life work for us and our families, and Sally is an amazing example of that. Now, if you're a lawyer and you're listening to this, please go and check out Women in the Law. The events that they run and the resources that they share are absolutely brilliant in terms of helping you advance in your career. So I'm going to share the links to Sally, her podcast, and the website in the show notes. So head over to lightboxcoaching.com/episode 66 to grab those links. So just a reminder for you to go and check out the event that we are running on the 26th of August. It is a lunchtime workshop for women who are looking to figure out how to find work that they love whilst raising a family. So you can get the link in the show notes to the event, and I would love to see you there. If you enjoy this show and you like this episode, please do share it with others, and also head over to iTunes or whichever app you listen to this podcast on and leave a rating and review. Every rating and review that we receive helps more and more women to hear this show and join in the conversation. All right, that's all from me today. Until next time, look after you and look after your babies. This podcast features music from Ben Sound.